Last weekend, for the first time ever, I managed to win a Lorcana Set Championships. In this video, I want to help you win one too. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Sean's Magic Cardboard. It has been a while since my last video, and I'm really happy to do this one for numerous reasons. First of all, to share this deck with you that actually helped me win a mat at Lorcana Set Championships. And also, it's been a while since uploading content, so best of both worlds today. So this is the deck that we used. I am a Ruby Amethyst player. I've always been a Ruby Amethyst player. I've tried moving away from Ruby Amethyst and was highly unsuccessful and didn't really enjoy it. So we are back with Ruby Amethyst, and thankfully this is the deck that actually managed to bring home one of these champion mats. And to be honest, not really that fussed whether it was a champion mat or whether it was just the standard play mat. I just really wanted the mat more than anything, and we've got one, and I'm super happy to open this today. In this video, I'm looking to break down all the matchups that I had in that set championships and give you a rough idea how I played those matches and the sort of strategies that I went into them with. The tournament itself consisted of 16 players, which meant a cut to top 4, followed by a top 4 match and a final. In the end, my record for the day was 5-0-1, with an intentional draw happening on round 4. This was the first set championships that I had attended where there was 0 red-blue players, which I was super surprised at and also slightly disappointed because this deck tends to do pretty well into red-blue as long as you get a good early start. There was, however, a very good Steel Song player, not such a good matchup from this deck, and I did come up against him both in round 4 and also in the top 4 matchup. Before we break down the deck, I just want to kind of show you the prize here. I've not opened this, so I got this on Saturday. The time of recording this video is now Wednesday, I think. I have kept it sealed because I wanted to do this on video. I can share with you guys, and then also at some point I can go back and watch this and, you know, kind of go through all these motions again. It feels weird putting these on top of the cards, but I'm going to do it anyway, just to kind of give you an overview of this mat. And I just absolutely love it. The plan is to use it. I have ordered a sort of tube. I haven't had the tube up until now for my mat. Champion! Yeah, so I absolutely love this thing. This is awesome. I'm so delighted to win one of these. I actually didn't care whether it was a champion mat or a standard play mat, but to win a mat that I can use, because normally I use a stitch mat at these events, and the stitch mat has sort of started to see better days. Find somewhere to put this. I've actually just laid it down in the bed there until I find somewhere better to put it. Well, if I was being super smart, I could have put it at the bottom and replaced this one with the Pooh one. But I like this one with the Pooh one as well. So I will use that for competitions. So look, in this video, I want to break down all the matchups that I had, the strategies that I went through. And before we kind of get to that, I just kind of want to talk through a few of these cards here that you see in front of you. The first thing in a game of Lorcana is your 1-drops. You really need 1-drops, particularly right now in this meta game. It's very fast, very quick, and that has helped me decide some of the cards that I've used for this. One of the cards from set 6 that has got a lot of attention, got a lot of people curious, is Diablo Obedient Raven. When banished, you may draw a card. Goes very well with the library, essentially drawing 2 cards if banished in the library. A good little combination there. Now, you also have the Crab as well. Give it +3, you can bash into something, and then draw a card for the sake of it. Potentially a really good card there. I use 3 of these. I use 11 1-drops in total on this build. I have 4 Churnabox Followers, which is massive. We'll come back to that a little bit later on. Magic Broom, which is possibly my favourite 1-drop. And then go for the 3 Diablos. Most people tend to use 4 of these right now in purple decks. I've went for 3. I did try this deck last week or the week prior with 12 1-drops, but I've made a few modifications. And to be honest, everything that you can see here, every card that's on this mat right now, it felt like they all came into use at some point and they all had some sort of value in all the games that I played. So one point that you could argue with this is it's pretty light on removal. You do have Brawls, which help banish anything from 2 or less attack. You get Sisu, which helps banish anything with 2 or less attack. Then you only have 2 Tremaines here. You do, however, have 4 Be Prepared and 1 copy of Dragonfire, which really did come in handy as well. So could there possibly be more removal? Maybe. But I'm really happy with the way this worked. And across all the matchups, as we're about to go into, it certainly helped. This deck comprised of 60 cards in total. I have played about with maybe going 61, 62. And for Ruby Amethyst at the moment, it really is a case of what you're going to cut out. For me, I didn't use any Genie, 4 cost, which Edmund Chu also didn't at the North American Championships for different reasons than myself. And to be honest, I've just not really found the fuss with Genie when you have Merlin Rabbit. I really like Merlin Rabbit, and there was nothing more disappointing of having something like a Madam Mim Snake in hand, which allows you to bounce back a character and then draw into a Genie as opposed to a Rabbit. It just doesn't quite have the same value for me in card draw. And I think card draw is kind of what I'm looking for, as opposed to just questing for 2, which is great in itself, and I guess the aim of the game is to get up to 20, but I'm pretty comfortable with getting to 20 with a lot of the characters that are on the board here. One final shout out before we get into the breakdown is Belle. I can't tell you how helpful this was on the day. There was, however, a little bit of a misplay from another player on the day, not in one of my matchups, but in one of my friends. They played Belle to move 3 damage from an opposing character to their own goal to get up to 20 in order to win the match. You cannot do that. Belle reads, when you play this character, move up to 3 damage counters from chosen character to chosen opposing character. So you can't actually move the damage characters to yourself. Very creative method, but unfortunately not legitimate. Alright, that's enough of a ramble for now. Let's get into some match breakdowns, and we'll speak about how I sort of approached particular matchups. So the first matchup of the day was against my best friend, who was actually also playing Ruby Amethyst. Their build, however, is completely different to the one that I run. Mine's is a lot more sort of traditional control. Theirs is a lot more heavily based aggro, with the likes of Arthur making an appearance, 1-drops such as Simba, and also 1-cost Maleficent. Very straightforward strategy here. Get to 20 before we can get going. They also use the likes of the Goat to get them over the line, as well as the White Rose 2, which also gives you a lure when it is played. So, aggro for this deck is not a very good matchup. And a Ruby Amethyst aggro deck, again, is probably not a great matchup. They have a similar strategy to you, but his deck is very much based around countering mine. And fortunately for me, in the end, I came out a 2-0 victor. So how did we go about doing that? Well, first off, the most important thing in those matchups, whether it be aggro, Ruby Amethyst aggro, or any other aggro match, is board control. Damage limitation is the name of the game until we can really start ramping things up and turning things around. So how are you going to do that? I think the most important things in those matchups are the likes of Chernobog's Followers, Magic Broom, and Diablo on this occasion. Diablo might seem a little bit of a unorthodox method, since it does have a 0-1 stat line, but really you just need something on the board. It doesn't really matter what it is. Get something on the board, keep it on the board until such time as you can use that to trade. So for example, in that matchup, it's very rare if I am on the draw that I will start questing with the Chernobog's Followers and banishing it to draw a card. It's very rare that in turn 2 I will banish a Broom to draw a card. Those situations would only really happen if you were very, very desperate. If you were in a really bad pickle and you had no choice but to try to find an answer. Unless that is the case, keep it on the board. Just keep it on the board until such time as you can get to turn 3, you can get a Fox to bounce it and start trading. Aim of the game is trading in this matchup. It's matchups like this that Magic Broom stats I feel are actually really underrated. This could take out 2 Maleficent 1-drops, for example. Take out 2 Simbas. You can actually do it a lot with a Magic Broom with the stat line of only 1-2. Chernobog's Follower is also a great option for trading. 2-1 stat line, a little bit weaker on the willpower, but also gives you the opportunity to try and clear the board a little bit. So very early on, that is the name of the game. It's that simple. Just get the 1-drops out. Do as much as you can. Brawl as well is going to come in super handy. For example, Arthur's. If Arthur is played in turn 3, a Goat in turn 4, that is 5 lore, which is a quarter of the way to victory for the opponent. So you really can't let that happen. As soon as you see an Arthur, find a way to get rid of it. Brawl, perfect example. Rabbit's also in the deck. Goat's also in the deck. And the inclusion of libraries. He was running the Queen's Castle up until the event. I did mention that library is maybe the better play, purely because the Queen Castle does have so many counters right now. People are really hot on how to counter it. For example, a Fox and a Crab combination will do it. You've got the likes of Maui, who'll do 6 damage, then you just need 1 damage from anything else, such as a magic broom. The castle at the moment is very much on the back burner. Not many people are playing the castle anymore, particularly after North American Championships, so the library is very much favoured. That extra willpower really can make the difference, and that was something I was thinking about as well when designing this deck and, making changes to this deck. How do you go about countering the library? If an opponent plays 2-3 libraries, if I play Be Prepared turn 7, they turn around, play 2 libraries, what am I going to do? How am I going to counter it? And the obvious answer there is a Maui to chip 6 damage onto something, a Fox, 1 drop into a Fox as well, get 4 damage onto something, Crab as well, and really just always being cautious or having an idea of worst case scenario if this happened. What could we possibly do to get us out of potentially a game losing situation? So for the first matchup, I was on play. That certainly did help, particularly against Aggro. It just gives you that extra turn to really get going. When you're on turn 7, they've just been on turn 6. You can use Be Prepared and reset the board. Be Prepared is still a massive function of this deck. It is not the be-all end-all. A lot of people dropping down to 2, sometimes 3 copies of this card. Some people not even run that at all anymore in this deck. For me, it's still much needed. It's a necessity. It has to be there. If you're playing Be Prepared, the chances are you don't have board control. So this is very much trying to reset the game. Worst case scenario, play a Be Prepared, reset the game, start again. So this isn't the first choice. This isn't the go-to in turn 7. It really is dependent on. If we do have other ways to sort of figure out the board and try to square things up, I would always look to go for those first, as opposed to just playing a Be Prepared, particularly in an aggro match, where you play Be Prepared, they come back down with 3 1-drops, then what are you going to do? You would need the likes of Brawl, you would need the likes of maybe Elsa, another Be Prepared, or something to try to square the match back up. So with a 1-0 victory in hand, it was on to game 2, and it's safe to say the more games you win, the harder the games become. In game 2, they don't come much harder than that. The matchup was Emerald Amethyst, a very dangerous matchup, and one where you have to be very careful at drawing too many cards, not drawing enough cards, and it really can put you in a difficult position. To make things even better, the player that I was playing against came in the top 40 in Birmingham DLC back last year, and I knew this was going to be a tough matchup. I'd lost to this opponent before, and if there was anyone in that particular room on that day I'd rather avoid, it was this matchup. And to make things even better, I was on the draw. So we really had our backs up against the wall. What I soon discovered within the matchup though was there was a few cards the opponent really didn't like. For example, Flynn Rider. They didn't have any direct way to really get rid of Flynn Rider. Flynn Rider was very much a nemesis to this deck, and one that really did save the matchup for me and did manage to secure me the win in the end. So this deck can get out of control very, very quickly. And the strategy, again, much similar to the Aggro Ruby Amethyst matchup that played the game previous actually, was low to the ground. Just really, really go for it. And to be honest, that was really the theme of this championships, is recognising that these games are quick. And if you don't have a 1-drop, you don't have a 2-drop, and potentially not even a 3-drop, the game's basically over. You can continue playing for a few turns yet, and you know what, the game might go on a little bit, but the chances are if you don't have a 1, 2 or 3, the game is over. So you really do need to make sure that you get a 1-drop and a 2-drop, particularly in this matchup. So I adopted a bit of a similar strategy, which is low to the ground, get as much on the board as possible, Churnabox Followers, Magic Broom, and Diablo. Diablo, again, you're looking for the Fox, you're looking for the Crab to get some value out of it if you're going to trade, otherwise it's just going to be card draw. Now there is a few brutal cards in this deck which, when you think you've got a picture of it, you think you're in control of the matchup, it's very easy to forget about particular cards in your opponent's deck which can really swing the game for them. And one of those cards is Go-Go Tomago. Go-Go Tomago is evasive, it's a 2-2 stat line. When you play this character, you may pay 2 to gain lore equal to damage on chosen opposing character. So pay 2, gain lore equal to damage on any character. For the likes of Sisu, there was a very pivotal point actually at the end of game 1 where there was 3 damage on Sisu. I didn't know whether the opponent had a Tomago in hand. I decided to bounce back Sisu with a snake and replay smaller Sisu. And afterwards the opponent did say to us that sort of won the game for me was that, because if not, the Tamago was coming out and that would have secured the game. The chances are in a green Amethyst matchup, the opponent is going to get ahead quite early on. With the likes of Cursed Merfolk, with the likes of Banzai, there's so many quick cards in there that can really allow them to accelerate. And very much you're trying to control the matchup before you can even think about going and taking the lead. In saying that, there did come a point where the only card the opponent could play to the board was Cursed Merfolk, which I swiftly followed up with Flynn Rider. And again, they don't really have much answers for that. They've got the likes of Elsa, which can exert and can hit into it. But otherwise, there's no removal in this deck. They do have Ursula's that can get rid of songs. But otherwise, the board is the safety net. Anything to the board for the vast majority of the time, unless it is exerted, is pretty much safe. And that's what I just tried to go for, is get as much on the board, less cards in my hand as possible. Cursed Merfolk doesn't make a difference if you don't have any cards. And yeah, just low to the ground very much again, try to take control of the matchup. I should say that I lost game 2 to this match. And again, it was a similar strategy that I adopted. I was on the draw, and yeah, the opponent just got away from us too quickly. I couldn't really do too much about it. And yeah, they deserve to win that one. Going into game 3 made things a lot bit better, knowing that I was on the play for the first time. I did lose the dice roll, so game 3 was the only game that I actually got to be on the play. And the strategy was simple. I knew that Flynn Rider had been effective the previous 2 games, so try to get Flynn out. And the way that I basically managed to secure the game was having 2 Flynns on the board, to a point where they managed to play an Elsa that managed to go into a Flynn to take out a Flynn. And the next draw was another Flynn Rider, which I played to the board, and the opponent did have any answers for. So a very, very tough matchup, not an easy matchup for this deck. It's very quick, as is many of the decks that I played against. As I say, there was no red-blue decks at all on the day. And yeah, just got to go low to the ground, really go quickly, get some board presence. These 1-drops are vital in a matchup like that. And preferably a 1-drop that you can do a trade with for, so a Chernobog or a Magic Broom. But a 1-drop's vital in that matchup. And more importantly than anything, a big function of this deck, with the library, with friends, with the rabbit, with the bounce characters, bring rabbit back, Diablo, Chernobog, a lot of this deck is built on drawn cards. And in most matchups, drawn cards is your safety net or your way out of bad situations. In this matchup, that is not the case. They had 2 copies of Clarabelle, which meant if you went ahead and just drew a humongous amount of cards, they were empty-handed. At the end of their turn, they could draw the same amount of cards you had in your hand. So in the back of your head, you also have to kind of keep that in mind, that you cannot allow them to have only 1 or so cards in hand whilst you have a whole lot more. Because in that situation, whilst it might feel like you're able to remove a lot of the stuff, you can get outdone by Clarabelle, and then the cycle starts again. They're able to play more stuff to the board, and then you're going to have to remove it all over again. So watch out for Clarabelle, and Dragonfire was a great answer to that. Dragonfire, Tremaine, be prepared. Those were the 3 ways of getting rid of Clarabelle in this matchup, and all 3 work. I guess maybe as well, but that's waiting on Clarabelle to exert. Dragonfire, straight away, as soon as it's played to the board, you can get rid of it. So at this point, we're 2-0 up. Been in this position before where you get into game 3 or top 4 game, and it all kind of like falls from under your feet. So I wasn't getting too excited at this point. But going into game 3 is probably one of the hardest matchups for this deck. And a matchup that, quite honestly, if the opponent draws the correct cards straight at the start, and they're on the play, there's really not an awful lot you can do about it. The game's pretty much set at that point. If they play perfectly, they get the right cards, you can't really stop them. So going into game 3, I knew that I was going to need a lot of luck. So, game 3, Steel Song. Possibly the arch nemesis of Ruby Amethyst. The singers have the ability to get rid of more stuff than you can play very, very quickly, and it's just a mess. One thing we don't like in Ruby Amethyst is not being able to control the board, and the aim of Steel Song is to get as many things out on the board as possible, get them all to sing, and yeah, get rid of your hand whenever they want, really. So it's a really difficult matchup, and yet again, a very similar strategy for this match. Stay low to the board, make trades as soon as possible, and the most important thing for me in the Steel Song matchup was get rid of the singers at any cost possible. So for example, Ariel turn 3 has to be brawled away. Turn 4 they can play Naveen, they can sing Whole New World if they want. You've really just got to do what you can do to clear up the board. The best thing with the Steel Song matchup is you know the opponent will draw cards for you, and that's really what you got to play into. Their aim is to empty their hand and play a Whole New World as soon as possible, so you just got to do the same thing. This is the matchup where Ink and Friends on the other side doesn't seem like too bad a thing to do. The likes of the library is still very useful. Churnabugs and Magic Broom are more useful on the board in these matchups, I feel, as opposed to trading them for an extra card as well. The likes of the rabbits also still going to come in handy, but less so than a lot of other matchups. I think the most important thing in the Steel Song matchup is the start. When you draw your initial 7 cards, ideally what you're looking for is a 1, a 2 and a 3. I really wouldn't even bother about the Flynn line of Flynn Rider followed by Sisu. That's less important in this matchup because the chances are they're going to have Let the Storm Rage on, sing it with a Cinderella and get rid of your Flynn anyway. One thing to note about that I would add, however, is I'm a big believer in let them have it. So by that, what I mean is if they're going to sing with Cinderella on turn 2, Let the Storm Rage on, that's almost in a way good for you. 1, it gets rid of the Let the Storm Rage on. 2, Cinderella is then left open to a challenge. It does mean Flynn Rider, for example, is banished. And again, this comes back to the importance of the 1-drop. If you keep the 1-drop in turn 1, turn 2, you play a Flynn Rider, which is followed up by the Cinderella singing Let the Storm Rage on to get rid of Flynn Rider. You could still potentially, however, play Madam Mim Fox on turn 3. Another strategy I have tried before is play as many 1-drops as possible. Play 1 and 1, 2 on turn 2, and just get as many out as possible, giving you the best chance to keep something on the board. They can start making trades or give you the chance of getting one of your bounce characters out. The chances are, in this matchup, that a Whole New World is going to be played fairly soon. The sooner they play it, the worse it can be for you. So in the mulligan, the most important thing is do not draw into any sort of uninkable. You don't want to draw into Be Prepared. You certainly don't want to draw into Lady Tremaine, Sisu in this deck. Any sort of uninkable is super, super important to keep it in your deck. The idea that I sort of approach this game, whether it be turn 3, 4, or 5, or maybe even 6, if the opponent's playing a Whole New World on turn 6, something's probably not going right for them. So you know they're going to play it quick. Get rid of your hand quick. Play stuff to the board. Get it in your inkwell. The worst thing you can do in this matchup, it's so crucial not to be sitting on too many cards. The opponent plays Whole New World, you have to get rid of them all and start all over again by drawing 7. In the final matchup, game 3, my deck must have been around about 4 or 5 cards, and the opponent was 1 Whole New World away from winning the game, basically. They didn't have enough ink to play it. I think they did have it in hand, but they ran out of ink and couldn't play it. And it is vital to keep cards in your deck because they're going to do their best to make sure you don't have any cards in your deck as a long-term strategy if they can't win the game by then. But at the start of the game, the focus very much has to be on securing the board, getting things tidied up as much as possible. So this here is actually the pad that I used to thing with the scores at the weekend, and I just want to sort of demonstrate sort of how close some of these matches were. So first of all, this was the Swiss match against the Steel Song player. So this was round 3. It looks like it might have went up to 16-11, so the score not too bad there. Going on to when they were on the play, however, 4-18, quite a clear lead for them. Never really managed to establish board control here. But going into game 3, a 14-4 score was a good victory for me, and I assume in this match they probably just not got the right cards. We managed to control the board well enough that we can then go on to control the game. However, going into the top 8 match against the very same player, looking at these scores, the games were a lot closer. So in the first game, I did manage to start the match 16-15 prior to me going up to 20. So a very close game. Game 2, where I was on the draw, not so close, I got to be honest. I think a score of 7-19 is probably flattering to me, to be honest. I think I just started questioning at the end when I knew there was no way to tie up the match, try to make the score a little bit more reasonable. But this is it here, game 3, where they managed to get up to 18 lore. I was at 14, and I just managed to play as much to the board as possible. I remember having a library out. I think I had a Tremaine, possibly a Sisu. This match here, game 3, was tight. It was really tight, and it could have really gone either way. My friend said to me afterwards, they were like, you literally did that perfectly. There was nothing you could do there. There was a point where they basically had the game sewn up. I think they were only maybe about 14 lower, and I had to go out and play. I had a friend on the other side, and they had too much on their board. The only thing that was going to save me was be prepared. And that's why those situations I talk about, where this is a last resort, basically. And in that case, this was the only card that was saving the matchup. So I managed to sing friends on the other side with the goat. The first card was like a 1-drop. Second card was be prepared. And had it not been be prepared, they'd won the match. So this really does get you out of jail in this matchup. At the end of the game, we reached a situation where we both just went super, super white. And I tried to put as much on the board as possible, use up all my ink as possible, get it on the board, and they did the same. I was very, very fortunate. They used their whole new world to try to get rid of the rest of my deck. I was down to about 5 cards. After they used the whole new world, they pretty much used up all their ink. I only had enough on the board to get me up to 19 ink. So at that point, I hadn't actually won the game, even though the turn passed back to me. I had 5 cards left in my deck, and it all came down basically to the 8 cards, 7 from Whole New World, 1 from Drawn of Turn, of what was in my hand at the start of that turn. Getting up to 19 on the board wasn't going to be enough. I had to win it that turn. There was no other choice. Be prepared wasn't an option. We just had to win it on that go. And in that point, that is when the goat appeared. The goat made an appearance. I can't even remember if there was a bounce character to bounce it and get more lore, but there was one goat in hand within the last 15 cards or so of my deck, and the goat single-handedly won that match for me, which I'm super, super thrilled about. Honestly, I can't tell you how happy I was to win that mat, and more importantly, to use it in the store that I want it in on a weekly basis as well. Steel Song is not an easy matchup. It's a horrible matchup for this deck. A horrible, horrible matchup. And more than anything, hopefully these scores can just tell you how close it really was. The Swiss, not so much. I think Swiss, I felt a little bit more comfortable. Going into the top 8, however, or top 4, sorry, the matchups, all 3 of them. The only one that wasn't tight, I feel, was actually the middle one. I feel like that one, they were in control the full time. I didn't really have much of a input in that game. But across the other 2 matchups in top 4 match, it was super, super tight, and every turn is just utterly vital. Making trades where you can, ensuring there's no lore gain, and they have so many cards that are just going to annoy you. For example, you have to be aware that Lilo, they can pay to it to bring it back. There's a few cards to watch out for in a Steel Song matchup. First of all, we've got Daisy Duck, 1/4 stat line, quest for 2, and it allows us to look at the top card of our deck. If it's a character, put it in hand. If not, put it on the bottom of the deck. Get rid of it as soon as possible. The card draw off is great, but you really want to get rid of it as soon as possible. The easiest way to do that is probably a brawl, but I would avoid doing that because you really need to keep brawls for your aerials. Get rid of their aerials as soon as possible. The best way to get rid of Daisy Duck, I would say, is a Chernobog into a Fox. That is the cleanest way to go about it. If you really have to, you could put a Chernobog and also a Flynn Rider into a Daisy Duck. That would also work. Whatever you have to do to get rid of it, just get rid of Daisy Duck as soon as possible. When the bodyguards start coming out, that poses another threat as well. So do what you can to get rid of Daisy Duck as soon as possible. Keep the Lilos off the field. They'll keep bringing them back. They are exerted, however, so they're not really doing anything. As long as you get anything in there to challenge it. 1/2 stat line, so it doesn't even have to be a big body. Flynn can take out 2 of them before taking out itself. A rabbit can take out 1. As long as their opponent has 1 card in their hand, Seesaw can take it out. Merlin can take it out. Make sure to take out Lilos as much as possible. Smee poses a little bit of a threat, and again, quest for 2. The opponent did have Rapunzel in their deck, so classic play there. Quest for 2, or quest for 4 potentially with Smee, and then heal with Rapunzel, start the cycle all over again, gaining cards and gaining more lore. Chernobog's follower is perfect for taking out Smee, so if you can get one of these down, keep it there. As soon as Smee is exerted, do the trade, and you're trading a 1 for 2. So that is a good trade from your side of things. Cards like Pluto Bodyguard also pose a little bit of a threat. 1/5 stat line gains 4 strength when there's no damage on it. So really in that situation, you're probably just going to have to trade maybe a Chernobogs or something into to get rid of that +4 and then make a more optimal trade to get rid of the character. Maybe you can take it out with 1 hit, but you're getting rid of 5 to get rid of 4, which doesn't feel great. But again, just do what you got to do to get rid of their characters. Calhoun, another one to watch out for. Very popular choice right now in most steel decks. And very straightforward. Just don't leave anything exerted. If you leave something exerted with Calhoun on the board, they're probably going to banish it if the stats allow for it in Game 2 lore. Don't let them do that. The only time it's probably a good idea to let them do that if the trade is actually favourable for you. So for example, if you're desperate for card draw, you're not really got much in hand, you can leave Rabbit exerted, allow them to take the Rabbit, give you a card, and also get rid of Calhoun too. You've got to remember the +1 resist on Calhoun as well. That could probably catch you off guard. It's essentially a 3-3, so best to treat it like a 3-3. Songs are going to play a big part, as you'd imagine, in Steel Song deck. Watch out for a Hone Your Rod. Watch out for Let the Storm Rage On. Watch out for Strength of Raging Fire as well. When they start getting a lot of cards on the field, that's when Strength of Raging Fire comes down and allows them to wipe out pretty much whatever they want. So after a very tense round 3, round 4 would have been against Blurpool. The opponent did, however, offer the intentional draw, which I did take. Allow safe passage into top 4. And in top 4, I again came up against my opponent of Steel Song. So I spoke a little bit about Steel Song there. I did want to mention some of the other matchups that I didn't actually come across today, but will probably be pretty common across these set championships. Red-Blue. First of all, go quickly. Get as much down as you can as soon as possible. Chernobog, Flynn, Sisu, perfect line. Maybe Merlin Rabbit to draw something turn 4. Maybe even a Goat to apply more pressure. Quick. Go as fast as you possibly can. If you're getting to turn 6, turn 7, you only have 2-3 lore, chances are you're going to have a really bad day in the office against Red-Blue. You have to go quick. Get as much lore as you can earlier on, and hopefully in the end game start sealing it with the likes of the Goat Bounce or something similar. As a general sort of rule of thumb, the chances are if you're playing any colour combination with blue, you kind of just want to go fast. You want to go quick. You want to get a lot on the board. You want to make them have it. Yeah, you just want to kind of get the game going before they can. Blue-purple, again, is probably another dangerous combination. They can do a lot more Goat Bounce than we'll be able to afford to do. 10-11 ink is what we're aiming for, to play the Goat Bounce and play it again for 3. If you're playing against the purple-blue deck and they manage to get their ink well up, they could well bounce multiple Goats on the same turn, which could be costly. So you really want to go quick in that matchup. Any blue deck, just go super fast, low to the floor, and get the game going as quick as possible. Alright, so this has been a sort of breakdown of my deck list for my first ever win at Set Championships. I'm still pretty stoked about it. I can't quite believe it, to be honest. It was the 9th attempt at a Set Championships. Previous results have ranged from top 4 all the way down to 8th, 9th position. So many times that I've missed out in top 8 because of tiebreakers. It was really nice being in a situation actually where one of my friends actually managed to hit into top 8 because of my tiebreakers. To be in that situation where your tiebreakers actually help someone out, it's quite nice. I'm sure there's probably a few other people that weren't as happy with me on the day with their tiebreakers, but nevertheless, it worked out for myself and my best mate on the day. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this video. This has been a bit of a ramble, I'm not going to lie. This was just something I really wanted to do. I wanted to break down this deck. I wanted to break down these cards, my sort of philosophy. One thing that I haven't mentioned is actually the 2 copies of Sisu, which Edmund Chu used in North America Championships. The reason I kind of went for it, and the reason I think it worked so well at the weekend, which it really did, was because every deck was low to the ground. And I think that's what we're seeing right now, is with the likes of the library, which can now be played in turn 3 with the likes of so many 1-drops. The effect of this is a lot more important than it was with maybe in a previous meta. In red-blue, for example, if you have ice blocks, you can use these. It may have more of an appeal. So to use 2 copies in Ruby Amethyst might be a little bit peculiar, but I can't tell you how effective it was, and I can't tell you how much these 2 actually won me the games at the weekend as well. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. I hope to have more videos lined up soon. If there's any matchup breakdowns you would like to see for Ruby Amethyst, please let me know, and I will do my best to work on that. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon.